What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we got part two with Charlotte Wessels. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for coming back.
It's my pleasure. Thanks. Good to be here.
Anytime, anytime. Always great to talk with a fellow art history major. It doesn't happen often, so it's great to be able to come back. But first thing is always first Tales from 6 Feet Under, Volume 2, coming out October 7th. Being that this is sort of like, this is Volume 2 of the Tales from 6 Feet Under series, do you almost consider this like a sequel in a way? Like, if a listener is just stumbling upon this now, they should listen to Volume 1 before this?
Not necessarily. I think that they work. I think that they work separately. I think that the thing that connects them is mostly the time in which they were written, which was a very weird time. Like for me personally, with the band split, but also globally with lots of lockdowns. So they kind of belong together in the sense that it comes from like this place of introspection and just me burying myself in the basement and putting out these songs every month to patrons. Um, so yeah, I think it's more the context of the album that makes them work together than necessarily that you have to listen to the songs in a certain order or something.
Mhm.
Uh,
Do you feel that the first singles that we have off of this part so far, Human to Ruin, Against All Odds, and Toxic, is maybe a good representation of what all of Volume 2 will sound like, or is there a lot more to be discovered from this time?
I think since they're all three of them are like so different that yeah, maybe it is a good representation in the sense that that the album is very eclectic, like its predecessor, but it is a bit heavier than Volume One. So yeah, it's still many different genres to find there, which I think the singles kind of show off
Hmm.
as well. But there are some tracks on here that I wouldn't have put on Volume One that are a little bit more like the symphonic metal area that people might know me from.
Hmm.
From
Definitely, and that's something I've admired about it too. Like when I listened to the part one, I like as somebody who listened to you all of your albums with Delain, like I was so astonished to hear a different side of you. Do you feel that being that this is a solo endeavor, and you also written this in a circumstance that doesn't happen often with the lockdown, do you feel like you unlocked a new side of yourself that you could use for the future, or do you just want these albums to kind of be a representation of that time and kind of explore different territory in the future?
No, I definitely think that this time, like I've learned so much in this time. I've never had such a steep learning curve in my life. Like um when I started this, like the biggest challenge for me was like I'm going to make these songs alone and not just write them, but also record them and basically everything until the mix and master, which also on this album, all of the songs were mixed and mastered by Guido Albers. He's the constant on there besides myself. Um, but I've never done production before. Like I've recorded my own vocals for Delain albums, but that was as much as I would do. And that was already kind of a challenge back then because, um, I wasn't too much into the technical side of things
Yeah.
yet.
Do you,
So
can you see yourself getting into the production world? That usually I've noticed a lot of musicians who also work in the world of production. They always kind of discover production by accident in a way. So can you maybe see yourself working with other artists?
um maybe just what I notice now also in collaborative efforts, for example, it's so convenient that even if someone else ends up playing things on the eventual recordings, it is so liberating to not need anyone else in order to communicate your ideas. That is something that has given me a lot of freedom. And yeah, maybe one day when I get tired of hearing my own voice, it will be a nice thing that I can keep doing music. But yeah, so far I mainly like the fact that I can kind of bring my own ideas to life.
being that isolation was clearly the armature that supported this Tales from 6 Feet Under series, was a lot of the ideas, was this, whether it be lyrically or musically, did this always come from an internal source of inspiration, or was there any like looking outward that influenced this as well?
There was also external factors. Like I remember the day that I started working on Toxic, for example. It was the day that a certain someone who was accused of um, the rape of many, many women was spoken free. And on the same day, in the same news item, was Britney Spears' trial. So it was kind of that that one line, well, the rapist walks free while the woman fights for autonomy. And I didn't even know back then that the woman fighting for autonomy, by the time that the song was released, would get like a totally different meaning for me. Because now when I think of that, I just think of the Roe v. Wade. Um, so so no, it's also very much, not all songs, but there are definitely influences from the outside world working their way into music. Like I've always wanted to be, it's not something that I want to do. I keep quite grounded with the songs. It's hard to separate yourself from the world around you.
Absolutely. They always say that life imitates art, but art always imitates life at the same time. And there's always times when I speak with artists that they say, "Oh, it all comes from within. The outside world doesn't influence me." And I've been guilty of saying that in art school too. But like in reality, I don't think the world is going to influence you one way or another, whether you intend to do it or not.
Yeah. It's that Skunk and Nancy song, yes, it's fucking political. When I studied not art history, after that I studied gender study, and like one of the things that they always used to say is the personal is political. Like you can think that, even if you think that you are not involved in any politics or in the world around you, that actually means that you're quite privileged because you can afford to not be involved. So even that is a political act, to say like, I'm not going to engage at all. That is also a political act,
Yeah.
because you're actively choosing not to do anything with that.
Well, yeah,
So it's I think that even if you ignore it, or even if you don't do something with it, that is a choice as well. And that is also, whether you like it or not, that's also kind of a political choice.
absolutely.
So
I
yeah.
interviewed Refused at the right before the world ended, like maybe a month before the lockdown and everything. And
Yeah.
Refused, as we know, is probably like the most, for lack of better words, because it that too is even a vague word, but most political active bands in the world are incredibly punk rock, and they like said saying that you are not political is a very political statement. So it's like a
Yeah. Yeah.
oxymoron in a way. So
Yeah.
were you influenced at all by punk rock? Because I know that because I feel like that has like, with what you've expressed lyrically and the meaning of it, like I've almost see like some punk rock music in your or like punk rock meaning within your purpose of creation.
It was very much part of the alternative scene that I kind of had my teenage years in. I think that it wasn't necessarily my core niche, but I appreciate it, like especially for that side of it as well. And uh, if you look at like the Riot Girls back then, it was also, yeah, a lot of interesting things happened there specifically.
Yeah,
So
the X-Ray Specs, "Oh Bondage Up Yours," I think is one of the, if not the greatest punk song of all time. So, like that's just always my, when I think of music that's meant to rebel against something,
yeah,
especially in the world we live in now. Like I think that is like the ultimate example of what it should be.
I should pull it up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We
Yeah.
definitely have heard it. We all heard it one point in our life, even if it was like played in like intermissions at shows. Do you
Yeah.
think that like the meaning of every song, whether it would be your solo work or even the stuff you've done with Delain, do you think that the music could evolve over time as you evolve as an artist in terms of its subject matter, or do you prefer if everything that you create is just like a snapshot of who you are at that particular time?
Hmm. Um, I mean, you can definitely tell, like when I did like the very first Delain record, for example, like those lyrics were all deeply personal because I was a self-absorbed teenager. And I think like kind of the older that I got, the more that turned into a reflection on your position in the world around you. And I don't think that it's possible to completely isolate yourself from the world around you. So it's, uh, but that definitely changes and shifts over the year. So, you know, just following where you are as a person, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that, you know, also, I think last couple of years I've been going through kind of a different phase where I also had like personal feelings or things that I really wanted to sing about, but then I didn't really want to say what it was really about. Like I didn't want to, you know, it's not, you don't always want to have your heart on your sleeve, you know. So then I would actually look for fiction that had like a similar theme, and then I would make lyrics about that fiction so that I could sing about it, not sing about myself, but still feel that feeling. So I find different throughout the years. I have kind of different, and I always only notice it like now, like I always notice it looking back, but not really at the moment when I'm doing it. It's always something where I'm like, oh, I used to do that. And so I don't know what my thing is now, what the big thing is, but we'll see in a
Yeah.
few years when I can look at today more objectively.
And
Yeah.
being, do you? I don't know how much you have left for Tales from 6 Feet Under. Like I'm calling the whole series the Isolation Diaries. That's how I've looked at this whole series. Like because I think isolation is such a great fuel for creativity. But do you think like if you were to explore, and I know it's kind of like a what if question, but like if you were to explore doing more solo endeavors in the future in a time that isn't, you know, pandemic times, do you think that the music is going to be very different in terms of because of the circumstances of the world that we live in?
I think so. And I also think that that is why I called this album, you know, Tales from 6 Feet Under Volume 2, because I think that the next record is not going to be like this. I think that uh, if I record another record and there's not going to be a lockdown, that I will want to give the songs a little more time to grow or not, but at least that they have the possibility to, that it doesn't have to be, oh, I'm so sorry, that it doesn't have to be done within like a month time frame, you know. So yeah, I think that it will be different, and I think that there will be more. I think that there will. I think that, you know, I will not have the programmed drums, but I will have an actual drummer play the tracks and, you know, things like that. Um, so so I hope for no more lockdowns,
Yeah.
and hence I hope for not
Yeah.
another isolation diary.
Definitely, definitely. I'm right there with you on that. Do you find it though, like the longer you work on a song, because you know sometimes you can work on a song or an album for days, weeks, if you're Tool, 13 years. But like if you work for an extensive period of time on a song, maybe it's harder to like maintain the emotion or maintain that moment that initially sparked that idea.
Yeah, and this is something that I have noticed now that I do these maybe if you leave it for much longer, you will find like you will have strokes of brilliance that really make it much more than it would ever be. But I notice now that I kind of have to do it all within that month, that often the things that end up on the Patreon and now the album, it's often first takes. I the song that I put out this month, Go to Sleep, that song idea is like, I had like just the beginning of the song, and that was like I have like a folder full of like 20-second or sometimes even 10-second song ideas. But that was like part of like a song idea that I had, and I just used the vocals from that first sketch and then worked from it and tried to match the sound of the vocals, because I couldn't really like that was the feeling of when I had the idea. That was the feeling of when I wrote it. So I felt like that didn't necessarily get better through doing it again.
Hmm.
I tried, but and it was nicer, but it wasn't better. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Nice doesn't mean good. I think like they're two
Yeah.
separate adjectives like that, and they describe two elements. And it's funny that you mentioned that too, because like let's say you were to like if you were to do like a solo show, right, like a headline show, and you were to bring Tales from 6 Feet Under one and two songs together, and you play them in like a different order, and you don't play the
Which
whole
I'm
song.
doing on the 23rd of October.
Oh hell yeah! I'm sorry that I
Yeah.
missed that. My
No,
bad.
no worries. I will take any opportunity to say that I am. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. No, sorry for interrupting
No,
you.
no.
Go on and ask
Please.
a
That's the
question
purpose of
because
this interview, promote everything. But like if you were to like, mix all these different songs together, and do you think that that would bring a different layer of context or a different layer of meaning if you were to like start off with Toxic and then do a 6 Feet Under Volume 1 song and then
um it does kind of like I've been working on this show for quite a while. Like it was announced a few months ago, and I the set list has changed so much since. Like, and I'm still kind of every time everyone thinks like, okay, now we know what we have to do, and then I'm like, mm, no, I think so. It's 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 definitely different in a live context. This is going to be so cool.
yeah. Please tell
Yeah,
me
I'm
this is
looking
going to be
forward to it.
live streamed or I'm going to have to book a flight soon.
Yeah, I got the question a lot because obviously this is like my first full show in like almost 3 years by then, and it's also going to be really special because it's going to be at Tivoli Vredenburg at the Ronda stage, which is the same stage that I did my last pre-pandemic show with Delain, and now it's going to be the first show ever again for my new material. So it has this weird symbolism to it where I'm like, um, that's going to be emotional, I think. And then joining me because these are my solo songs, but I won't be on the stage alone. And joining me are also Otto and Timo and Joey, who I've played with for years within Delain as well, and Sophia, the newbie in the group,
Mm,
who plays the keys and who is doing a great job and forgives us for all of our inside jokes.
mm.
Um, so um, so yeah, it's going to be really special, and yeah, that a lot of people have asked for like live stream, but it's 20 plus songs 20 plus songs worth a show of things that we've never played live before. So I honestly think that doing the live stream is too much pressure. Like maybe we will do that at some point, but I'm like, let's first just do this because that also adds like another layer to the production again, which is plus it's a big venue. I've got to sell those tickets.
Yeah,
So
I got you. I got you. Well, I guess I'll just have to surf on YouTube for that. I'll reach out for some
I'm
people.
sure that there will be, and we will also try. We will try to capture material and have things to show for the people who cannot be there. Because obviously, I don't expect everyone to fly over. That would be bad for the environment. But if you do, it's very nice.
I'll
But
swim if I have to. I'll swim.
yeah, please consider swimming to Utrecht. Um, so so we'll try to have some material that we can show in the end. But yeah, no, we're not live streaming the entire thing. That's too like I'm already nervous as it is.
Fair enough, fair enough. But I know you will kill it. As somebody who has seen you perform countless times before, I know you will kill it. You make every stage your own.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to do a lot of special things too for this show. Things that I mean, I am planning to do more shows in the future, but we're definitely going to do some things that um, are going to be specific for this show in particular. So
Yeah, just
yeah,
bring it to New York one day. but uh, but there was
I'll try. I'll try.
there was one actually a Delain related question I wanted to ask because this year marks 10 years of We Are the Others, and to this day I think the song that you did with Burton Seabell is I think one of the greatest songs like in that genre. It to period and I just think it was just absolutely beautiful, as well as Get the Devil Out of Me, which is a really memorable song. If you don't mind me asking, just kind of going back to 2012, what the sort of mindset was behind the making of that album and how the progression has changed for yourself as an artist since then.
I think that that was it's my favorite Delain record. And I think that that was a very special album to make as well. Like we went and basically lived in Sweden for we've been there for, I think altogether we must have been there for a few months, to work on and record the album there. And it was very, very intense. It was the first like we worked with an external producer, and yeah, we had a lot of outside help, which was great, but it also really pushed us, like, to, sometimes you think, ah, yeah, this is all right. It was like, no, that can be better. It, like, so I think that that was a process that um I learned a lot from it. I also really liked, when back when I was doing that, I was studying gender studies, and I was in this phase of being so deep into everything that's wrong with the world, basically. So I feel like I was living everything very intensely in the making of that record, and a lot of things that we learned there we took with us, after that experience.
Yeah.
Uh,
Was Where's the Blood with Burton, was that kind of one of the meanings behind that? Because I feel like lyrically that does express, like, just because you don't see blood doesn't mean that there isn't pain. That was kind of my interpretation of the song in a way, and I was wondering if that was maybe what the meaning of that particular song was.
I mean, it definitely was, but for me, it was also like because that is true, because you can be so hurt without there being any blood. I thought that it was kind of the ultimate gaslighting statement to make, to tell someone, so it's obviously these lyrics do not reflect my feelings, but if it was about a song of people trying to hurt each other, and trying to, um I felt that that statement was uh kind of the ultimate kicking someone when they're down, which I think is why it makes it um a lyric that kind of punches you in the face.
Definitely,
Uh,
definitely.
or I kind of hope that it would do that, but then in a nice, this is music, so it doesn't actually happen to you sort of way.
I think
Yeah.
it had the best of both worlds, where it was like melodic and gentle enough to the point where it pulled the listener in, and then it hit you with the message that is expressed behind it, which it's not easy to do. Usually I've found it's one way or the other. And to the final question, I wanted to end this interview the same way we ended the last one, with art history, because as somebody who's studied both art history and gender studies, is there a specific artist within, like, the feminist movement, whether it would have been Georgia O'Keeffe or Anna Mendieta or Frida Kahlo, that ultimately inspired you to explore this subject matter in your work? Because art history, I feel like when I went to school for art history, a lot of people studied gender studies after that, and there were many different artists that have, inspired them to
Yeah,
do that.
because they were probably like, now let's study all of the people that art history didn't teach us about, right? It's
Yeah, my
at
art
least
history teachers were very good at that. I will say I
that's
lucked
fantastic.
out with that.
That's
So
fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of those, I mean, they were very important within, that time frame. And Frida Kahlo, I honestly, um her way of expressing pain is so, like, everyone can feel it, everyone can look at her paintings and feel that. So that has certainly been very inspiring. An artist that I've also, actually, back when we were recording, um back when we were recording We Are the Others. I think that's at the time where I also went to several expositions of Sarah Maple. She's a UK artist. She does really cool work as well. And uh, yeah, and a lot. I mean, I still really get inspired by art. Funny enough, like the one song on this album that was directly inspired by a work of art is not by a not by a female artist, but Venus Rising was very much inspired by the Venus of Botticelli.
Oh my god.
Um, which is like, I know I'm basic, but
It's a strong piece of art. It doesn't make it basic at all. It just feels so good. I get to talk with an artist who writes about that sort of material in a way.
yeah, and it's like because I was when I was working on that song, there were some scandals going on in the Netherlands. Like there were big scandals with our TV show The Voice, like our Dutch brand of that. And it turns out that there had been a lot of abuse behind the scenes. And I got really angry, and I got really angry about the responses to that, because a lot of that was like, oh, you know, these women should have said something. And it was like the classic kind of victim blaming. Oh, how could we have done anything about that? While probably a lot of people were aware. But I was in this kind of very angry mode, and I was looking at the painting, and I was kind of like, it is weird to be like jealous of a painting, but I was like, it's it's such a nice thought that throughout the centuries, like she never had to change, she never had to cover up, she never had to be more naked, she never had to be smaller, never had to be bigger, she never had to be louder, she never had to be more silent. She was just always rising from the waves, and that will not change. And I know that there's some kind of irony to it, because of course she is the very representation of what like the beauty standard in that time was. So maybe she was the Kim Kardashian of those times, uh, but for me, just the fact that the Venus was always rising, and regardless of what society tells, she's kind of immune to that. And then that was kind of a thought, like, oh my god, to be immune to all of the bullshit. That was kind of the inspiration behind the song.
That's it's so empowering and really really beautiful. One artist I was going to recommend, since you like that piece so much, she actually taught at my school. I really recommend if you check her work out. Marilyn Minter, if you haven't heard of her. Yeah,
No,
just
I haven't.
like she's the one who got me interested in that subject matter. I wasn't very much aware of the issues, and like her work got me into it after a teacher recommended me to her. She was like had a very unorthodox style of teaching, but her work is just truly breathtaking.
Is it these a close up? Sorry, I
Yeah,
just pulled it up right
yeah,
now. Is these very close up
yeah,
photography?
yep, that's her.
It's very cool. I think I've seen these before. Um, this is cool. I will check it out.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. And Anna Mindietta would always be my favorite. And I got in trouble in school because when we were talking about Carl Andre, I stood up and said he's a murderer because he, I called him the O.J.
What?
Simpson of the art world. So
Yeah.
yeah, that
I
was
had to do like a whole I had to do a big presentation about Cellini when I was going on an art trip to Florence back in the day, and he he was also a murderer. And it's so weird, it's like that they can have like these careers, but I mean that was the Renaissance. I'm sure
yeah
things have
Caravaggio.
changed.
Caravaggio's one of my favorite artists, and he killed what
Yeah,
like three people. Like I mean,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Same. Well, same kind of time frame. Yeah.
Yeah, but Caravaggio had a reason. All right, there was a dispute on the modern what would be tennis on the squash court. All right, like you don't argue with
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you don't. No.
that
Okay, that's fair.
that
No,
was my
that's
that's one of my favorite stories in art history, and they just kept letting him out because to paint. If I could get away with any crime just for being an artist, That's when you know you.
I didn't know that about Caravaggio.
Yeah,
I should
yeah.
yeah,
He would
that's
get
cool.
he would get drunk
No,
and
it's not cool. It's not cool, but it's
no,
yeah.
it's unique. He would get drunk and then hide in an alleyway and whip people with a sword just to be a dick. Like,
Hmm.
so,
All right.
quite the charmer, that guy. Um,
Yeah.
and you led me into actually the final question I wanted to ask you, because with using the issues in today's world, it's obviously very important to be addressed through multiple mediums, and and I commend you for being able to do it. But it does spawn a lot of anger and a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression as somebody who does look at the world, you know, for that artistic goal to express that. Does that at all make it the creative process a little bit deteriorating as you have to look at the negative aspects of the world, or does it make it cathartic in the end?
It makes it cathartic, definitely. I have had a lot of instances of not seeing a way out of a certain feeling or out of a certain, when you feel stuck in a place that is not a good place, and where I really didn't know how I could have it go away. And then if I would sit down with that feeling and then put it to music, and it doesn't even have to be good music.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if I would sit down with it and put it to music, um, without having actually solved anything, I would feel like much lighter in
Mm-hmm.
a way, and that feeling would feel much lighter. um yeah, so I have the tendency, and I don't know if this speaks to my character or not, but if you can turn a tragedy into something that is less tragic, then that kind of makes me feel good.
No, that's incredible, and I think that's one of the main purposes of art. It's just I've always wondered with bands that talk about the evils of the world, like Rage Against the Machine. They've expressed just about every
Yeah,
issue in the world,
yeah,
and I'm glad that they have. But part of me wonders, like, how many years did they take off their life, stressing themselves out to express that? I mean, it is like a sacrifice in a way, and anger,
yeah, you get
justified or
like a
not,
lot
anger
of
is never
shit
good
for
for
it.
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
justified or not,
yeah,
anger is never good for you on a health wise. So
yeah. Yeah. No, I have a lot of respect for people who spend their time, like who work activism, and because I am not immune to things that people say about me on the internet, which I'm sure I should be after all these years. But I'm good at ignoring it, but I'm not immune to it. And if you see, the activists that I follow, if you see the absolutely rotten comments that they get on a daily basis by such great amounts and still do the work, um, I have so much respect for that.
yeah,
Like I have, yeah, um, yeah,
yeah.
a lot of respect for that.
I think if anybody who carries on doing what they love and doing what they believe in, regardless of what abuse comes as a result of it, it's the ultimate test of strength. I think. I think there's external strength demonstrated when you all unite together in a group to fight against an injustice or any sort of issue that's happening in the world. But there's inner strength because there's always going to be an equal and opposite reaction towards what we fight for. I think to stand your ground is the ultimate form of strength. And within Temptation, a fellow Dutch symphonic artist, I think it demonstrated that a lot on their last album as well. So,
Yeah, definitely,
yeah,
definitely.
yep.
Yeah.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for coming back, and I look forward to doing a part three. We definitely got to continue talking art history again.
Yes.
Is there just
Yes.
anything else that you
Absolutely.
would like to plug for the release? I know you have the show October 23rd. You said.
Yeah, it's in Utrecht, Tivoli Vredenburg. I mean, this is a US channel, so I'm not sure how relevant that is. But for anyone
We get
watching
viewers
this
on
from
all over Europe.
anywhere, from closer to Utrecht, who knows? It's going to be amazing, and I'm going to have, fantastic people with me during the show. So
Yeah.
I look forward to it a lot. Yeah.
And you're fantastic fans as well. It's gonna make it a great, beautiful night.
Yeah, it's just the support over the years. I wouldn't have been able to do this, without the support over the Patreon, but also just people who spread the word and take interest and check out these interviews and do these interviews. Thank you, I appreciate it. So
Anytime.
yeah, yeah.
Anytime. But great to talk with you. Everybody, Charlotte Wessels, be sure to check out Tales from 6 Feet Under, Volume 2, coming out October 7th. If you are in the Netherlands and watching this, catch them October 23rd. And we will see you next time on Heavy New York.